Hi, welcome to NarraScope 2023. I'm Yoyu and I'm joining you from London, the UK. Today I'm going to talk about narrative meets multiplayer, our journey of creating a social narrative experience behind our upcoming game, Whispers in the West. A little bit about myself. My name is Yoyu Li. I was a writer and a narrative designer behind Rings 3 Kingdoms. Rings 3 Kingdoms is the fifth game in the mobile game Rings series. It was published by Devolver Digital on the Netflix platform last year. So, if you have a Netflix subscription, I highly recommend you try this game. It's a lot of fun and it's free. I'm currently working on my second video game title, Whispers in the West. Whispers in the West is a point-and-click murder mystery game that supports up to 4-player co-op. I'm passionate about multiplayer experiences because my background is in board games. I started my career in games industry as a board game publisher, and I believe games are more fun when shared with friends. So when I founded my own studio, the first game I wanted to make is a multiplayer co-op game that took inspiration from offline murder mystery games. Before we coming back to this game, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about social narrative games in general. Obviously, if we talk about social narrative games as board games or tabletop games, there is a long history. But if we specifically talk about video games, I believe many of you can recall MUD, Multi-User Dungeon, that came out in 1978. For those who are not familiar with MUD, MUD is basically a text-based adventure game that lives on the internet. Unlike single-player adventure games of that time, players can meet other players online. They can team up or even fight against each other. And MUD is in general considered the inspiration for many massive multiplayer online games that came out later, like EverQuest or World of Warcraft. Although games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, they are social narrative experiences, they are not my primary focus for this talk. A very important reason is that I don't feel qualified to talk about games like that scale, because my interest and experience is mainly with independent games that push the boundary. For example, a game I particularly like is TikTok: A Tale for Two, which is essentially a 2-player escape room with a significant narrative element.
I think I can spin the handle on this box.
Oh, I turned on the train and now there are words. I have some instructions.
And another 2 examples are the 2017 PlayStation game Hidden Agenda and the 2022 game As Dusk Falls. What these 2 games have in common is that they both support multiplayer gameplay, as players share the same screen, but they can vote separately to decide how the story should pan out collectively.
Hey! Hey! I'm going anywhere.
And the most recent example of social narrative game is King of the Castle, which just came out earlier this year. King of the Castle takes advantage of the Twitch platform. The viewers can vote in-game while watching their favorite streamer playing the game, and their votes will decide how the story goes in the game. And of course, there is Whispers in the West, the game I'm making, coming out later this year. Some of you may ask, how does point and click go with multiplayer co-op? For this, let's watch a short clip from the demo playthrough.
Some say it's a vengeful curse. Interesting. Because my guy's supposed to be good at picking up paranormal activity. We have 5 minutes to finish up the day, by the way.
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
we got some good information though.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see if my lockpick works on anything.
I got a free sample of meat at the butcher.
Let's
Ooh.
go!
What if you,
Free
could give, what if you
Wait.
could give that to the blacksmith?
This playthrough is from a real Twitch stream. You probably have seen a pattern here. In recent years, we have seen a comeback of social narrative games. I think this has something to do with Twitch. Twitch is more than a streaming platform. It is in fact a social platform. 80% of Twitch channels have fewer than 100 average viewers. So not all Twitch streamers came to the platform to make millions. They are there to make friends. And there are many social features that support this, for example, squads, teams, and raids. Social co-op games is a genre that many Twitch streamers actively look for. And this is another reason we started making Whispers in the West. Because apart from me, every single member of my team are the Twitch generation themselves. So how do we make a meaningful social experience? The basis for co-op in Whispers in the West is essentially fragmented information. What does this mean? Suppose we have a clue person X could have been at the scene. We could split this information up and slip it through 3 different places. For example, one player may find person X was not at home, and another player may find someone broke into the house, and another person find person X had the tools to break into the house. So by playing together, players quite literally put those puzzle pieces together and eventually understand what is going on. This is the basis of co-op in the murder mystery. And we also have role-based dialogues. For example, the sheriff has a sheriff's badge. He can use this badge to threaten outlaws to make them cough out more information. And the outlaw has a lockpick, so she can use the lockpick to get access to places other characters, other players are less likely to get access to. So each player will choose a role before starting the game, and each of them are more adept at acquiring certain kinds of information. In general, the storytelling in Whispers in the West is nonlinear, meaning that events, they don't necessarily follow a certain order. As you can imagine, it's a lot harder to design and test a game like this because we don't know how players will discover each information, how the events could happen in which order, and we don't know if certain clues are just too hidden for players. So we need to do a lot of playtests. And today, on average, we do 2 playtests every week. We invite external playtesters to join those sessions because it's a murder mystery. Very more often than not, we need new, fresh players to the game. It's a difficult process, but frankly speaking, it's also the most enjoyable process because every week we see external players coming in and we see their reaction, their feedback of the game. Most of the time, they really enjoy the game. Sometimes they also discover things not quite right or things don't necessarily work out. So we improve upon those feedback. So this is the iterative design approach we take. In general, for each case, we start with a playable draft. We put this draft in the game, and then we organize playtests. During the playtests, we will observe how players interact with the game, how players understand the story, and we ask for feedback. So if anything doesn't quite work out, we go back to the draft, we modify the game script until we have a satisfactory game script. So till this point, it's mostly just narrative designers get involved in the process. And after we get a satisfactory game script, we involve writer who who helps us to flesh out the dialogue lines, make the characters pop up, and fill in some backstories. And that's how we get the final game script. As a narrative designer myself, I can definitely say this iterative design approach is very helpful in shaping the stories. And the motto, test early, test frequently, comes from my experience in board games. Board game designers spend a significant amount of time in playtesting, as there are very few games that cannot be prototyped with paper. For Whispers in the West, we prototyped the game long before we started building the game in Unity. Our first prototype was basically some of the team GM'd the game. So a couple of us played the role of the players, while a couple of us played the NPCs. We created many Discord channels. Each channel is an in-game location, so the player can go up to a location and talk to the NPC there, who are actually played by another member in the team. This is how we did our first playtest for Whispers in the West. A more sophisticated prototype we had was a Discord board. By this point, we already wrote some of the dialogues, so instead of having team members play the NPCs, we have the bot spell out the dialogues. We did our first external playtest this way, and it worked wonderfully. I guess the takeaway here is prototypes can definitely come in different shapes and forms. There's usually no reason you cannot test the game early if you want to. And I think it's very important to build tools to enable writers or narrative designers to iterate fast. For this, we have an automated pipeline. When writers make changes to the game script, it triggers the automated process to convert the writing into a format recognized by the game. And the assets are stored in a cloud storage, so the writers and the players can then almost immediately test the game in Steam, without the need for Unity. As an example of how the iterative design approach helped us improve the design of the game, I can recall a trade-off we made. One of the interesting things that come with co-op point-and-click game is how we manage the inventory. In the game, the players will acquire items or meet other NPCs. One of the first questions we had in terms of design is, should we have individual inventory for each player? Or should we allow the players to exchange items somehow? Through playtests, we find out while allowing the players to consciously exchange items is realistic, it complicates the game for no good reason. But if we have a shared inventory instead, many players will be confused as they may suddenly find a new item in their bag without knowing where it came from. Eventually, we decide to use shared inventory, but the game not only tells the player what they have, it also notifies the players when their teammate discovers the item. And it always provides information who discovered this item in the inventory UI. But to manage people you know, it's a different story. Players intuitively understand, while player A talked with a certain NPC, player B is not necessarily acquaintance of them. So people you know is not shared with other players. In the game, we also have another kind of information which we call labels. Labels are arbitrary information we attach to a player, but not visible to the player. For example, if by displaying the sheriff's badge, the sheriff managed to make the banker comply, the sheriff player will acquire a compliant banker label, which may have an impact in the dialogues later. This kind of label is not shared with other players. But there are other labels. For example, if a door is opened, they are shared immediately across to other players. And finally, we come to our last topic. To support this nonlinear storytelling, we created our custom narrative engine. When we started developing the game, we did try to use some open source dialogue narrative engines, such as Yan Spinner. We loved Yan Spinner at the beginning until the dialogue nodes just grow so crazy that became impossible to manage. So the picture on the right-hand side is a real spiderweb-like dialogue nodes we had when we just started building out the prototype of the game. And because we need role-based, in particular because we need role-based dialogue lines, we had to write so many nested if statements, and our writer didn't particularly enjoy writing those if statements. For reasons I just mentioned, we moved on to create our own narrative engine, what we call condition-based switching. So on the right-hand side is an example of our game scripts. So this paragraph of text define a dialogue node called greetings. Basically, it will be triggered when the player started to interact with the banker. So the banker has a default dialogue line, "Howdy, how can I help?" But if the role is sheriff, the banker will say something like, "Oh, it's just you, sheriff," instead. And similarly, if the player's role is the outlaw, the banker will say, "You better have a good reason to be here again." And when the player acquired the character called banker, next time the banker will greet the players in a different way, and so on and so forth. This is what we call condition-based switching. So essentially, we managed to move from the nested if statements like we have on the left-hand side to the game scripts we have on the right-hand side. I don't know about you, but personally, I certainly prefer. So these two screenshots, they both describe the same dialogue logics. I certainly prefer the one on the right-hand side, much cleaner, much more readable. But just to make it clear, I think there's nothing wrong with traditional narrative engines like Yan Spinner or Twine. It just doesn't really work for us because our storylines are largely nonlinear, and if we were use tools like this, we have to write a massive amount of nested if statements. Tools like Twine or Yan Spinner, they are still great tools for learn and to create certain types of narratives. Finally, I want to wrap up this talk by calling out making social narrative games is fun. And as a game designer, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing players genuinely enjoy the game and especially enjoy the time playing this game, sharing this game with their friends. And I want to show you a short clip of what players say about Whispers in the West.
That was actually really fun.
That was actually really fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
That was very fun.
I'm not gonna lie, this was fun as Actually, I really liked this.
Man, I hope they had more. That was kind of neat.
That was really fun.
This is really cool.
That was really fun.
That was really fun.
Like the fact that I could play with y'all
and together we're trying to solve this.
I may suck at first-person shooter games, but I am a boss when it comes to these.
I don't really do like visual novels, but I do like mysteries, and this is nice.
Not enough evidence to support your theory, my friend. They could not possibly be the murderer.
Yeah.
What is the score? Yay.
I definitely want to get this game and play it again. Like,
Yeah.
Well, we lost. You can pet the cat in this game?
We can pet the cat!
And thank you so much for staying with me. Please check out our game, Whispers in the West. There's a free demo on Steam, and the demo actually includes a full 1 hour long case that you can solve with your friends. And the game will be released later this year in the summer. Please follow us on Twitter, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me personally. Thank you.